Asked how long we would have to wait for a common European or EU army become a reality, Federica Mogherini, Foreign Affairs Commissioner, said 50, 60, 100 years from now, who knows? Unquote. Um, disappointing. Disappointing. So to give you a little bit of context, as Euractiv reports, there's going to be a summit of EU leaders in Bratislava on the 16th of September, where they will talk about the future of the EU. And now, ahead of that summit, President Hollande of France had said we should go ahead with better defense cooperation that might include a EU army. There was a summit on the 26th of August in Warsaw, where Viktor Orban, President of Hungary, said that we need an EU army. Also, Prime Minister Sobotka of Czech Republic said, quote, "We must continue the Coast Guard Agency project, and the time has now come to consider the creation of a joint European army. Only EU-wide armed forces will allow us to defend our interests on our own." Unquote. Angela Merkel of Germany is, of course, cautious, as always. Poland and Slovakia are also more cautious about this issue of a common EU army. They say we should first improve battle groups. Now, I find this whole disagreement and this hesitation, I find it really disappointing. I think we need to go ahead and create a common European army, not in 50, 60, or 100 years, as Mogherini so disappointingly said, but what about 10 years as a deadline? So why do I say that? Why do we need a common European or a common EU army? So first of all, right now, the European countries depend on the US for their defense. So the US has about 4% of the GDP as military spending. European countries have about 1%, most of them. And there's US troops all over Europe. There is the nuclear umbrella protecting Europe. So we rely on their security guarantee that they pay with their tax money, and of course also with their lives potentially. While we just enjoy this security provided by them, and do nothing to it. So and there is no guarantee that they will continue forever to do this. They now have their pivot to Asia, so Asia is becoming more important for them than Europe. Trump said that we should not meet NATO commitments. I mean, the US should not meet NATO commitments if countries don't spend enough on the military, or if they can't defend themselves. And Trump may become president, so this is a real problem that perhaps in the future they are not going to look after us. And why should they always if we do nothing to it? And so that leads to my second point, the use of a common EU army. A common EU army could provide an effective deterrence against any possible attacker. And now I'm thinking specifically of Russia. I wouldn't have said that like 3 years ago, but then, we all know what happened in Crimea, where they sneaked into Crimea and took it away from Ukraine and annexed it, basically. And they did so on the ground of protecting the Russian minority, or Russian-speaking minority in Ukraine. Now, there is big Russian-speaking minorities in Estonia and Latvia. So maybe Estonia and Latvia might be next. Now, the thing is, Estonia and Latvia are, of course, in NATO, so technically there is the deterrence that if they are attacked, everybody will come rushing for their help, the 28, or the other 26 NATO member states. But the question is, would they actually do that? Would they risk a war with Russia over such insignificant countries as Estonia and Latvia? That's not quite clear. And now, I'm not in favor of saying we should risk a war with Russia, but what I just say is we should be ready for it so that it doesn't happen, because Russia knows, it couldn't win, so it wouldn't attack, and there is no temptation. And if we had a common European army, that would of course also be stationed in Estonia and Latvia, and if somebody tries something with Estonia and Latvia, immediately they are at war with the entire EU. It's not like that the other EU member states could then decide, no, we back down because they are not in charge of that common army. So I think a common European army could be a much more effective deterrence than NATO can now. And also, there have been numerous reports that there are a lot of issues in NATO with compatibility of weaponry and strategics and tactics, and so it's NATO is in a difficult state also. So that's the first two reasons. The third reason why I think we need a common European army is in order to save money. Now we have, I think, almost 2 million soldiers in the EU, so more than the US has, actually, much more. Um, and still, we are weaker militarily, so per capita, the expenditure on equipment is far lower. And we only have so many soldiers because, every country has its own army. If we didn't have that, if there was one common army for the EU, we could have half the size or a third the size. So we would have an army that is better equipped with the same amount or even less military spending. We might also be more effective on humanitarian interventions that are mandated by the UN somewhere in certain wars or when there is a genocide. So it might be more effective in stopping it. We think about it, how the Europeans failed in Bosnia to stop the so-called ethnic cleansing there. This is something you have to think about. And it was in the end the US that then stopped the killing, not us. So, and I think we should be able to look after, our neighbors and prevent such things from happening. Um, Now, one could say, well, there might be other possibilities, such as having still different armies, but a closer cooperation. But we know where that has led. Nowhere. There are these battle groups of the EU. They are totally ineffective and not very helpful. Um, so that's not, that's not the solution. And also, such a common European army should not be nationally controlled. It must be a national army controlled by, I don't know, the European Parliament, ideally, because they represent all Europeans. Because we cannot have it that, I don't know, France decides to do something in Africa and everybody else has to send troops without being asked. So it has to be somebody or a body that represents all Europeans that is also in charge of that army. So we should go ahead, get treaty changes done, and introduce the European army not in 60 years or 100 years, but in 10.